Howdy, y'all. This is Market Explainer, America's #1 business news podcast. We're going to move on to this last story about Squid Game. But before we do that, I want to tell you about Powerhouse Drones. A lot of you are going to be sitting at home now or whatever, looking for a new hobby, want to learn about flying a drone, want to see what your neighbors are up to in their house because they're always getting
that's
weird
illegal.
packages.
Danny, stop it. Go ahead.
Of course, I'm not telling people to do that. I'm joking. It's a joke. You can go to powerhousedrones.com. It's my website. You'll learn about what kind of drone is the right drone for you to use in entirely legal and moral ways.
Yes. Because he said that with a lot of confidence. But go ahead.
So this last story is an interesting one. The big man sent it to me, and I just don't care for it. But again, you know, we're a 1950s marriage. Sometimes you have to let the little lady do what she wants. So
First of all,
Netflix,
you have not seen Squid Games. Really?
No.
Like
No.
none of it?
No.
Are you crazy?
I don't speak Korean. And I'm
They
not going to watch
They have
it.
an English dub version. All right.
I don't like the English dub version. And then, listen.
All right. I'm just
if
going to
it's
say
not-
this. It's probably the best English dub version of any show I've ever seen.
So when I was a kid, I loved watching karate movies, kung fu movies, that kind of thing. I watched a lot of dubbed over stuff that was Chinese to English, Japanese to English. Can't do it. I'm just over it. I'm not watching subtitles. I don't care how good you say it is. I don't care how you're not the
It's so
only
good.
person in my life saying I have to watch this. You're not the only person saying, well, there's an English dub version. Tell you what.
It's so good.
Yeah, okay. So they're saying that Netflix is estimating, and this is a mind screw of a phrase, but they're saying that over 130 million people have watched the show.
Yes.
It cost them about $20 million to make Squid Game.
Yep.
And they're saying the second season will bring around $900 million of value. Which,
No. They're saying this first season has created
really?
$900 million in value.
I got it wrong?
Yeah. So here's the deal. And here's why this is important. And we kind of alluded to it earlier.
Ooh,
Obviously,
Netflix,
unlike a movie that comes out at the movies, right? We've all heard the headlines where, okay, the new horror movie made $200 million worldwide,
Right.
whatever. Netflix doesn't do that. They don't sell tickets. They sell monthly subscriptions, right?
Right.
So this goes into what we were talking about earlier about maintaining customers, right?
Right.
And how they maintain and grow customers from month to month, right, is by providing new products, new shows, new movies, whatever. So they have to evaluate what something is worth differently than a movie ticket. Right. So they have an algorithm on the back end, which, by the way, Netflix is notorious for not giving out information. They'll say something like, oh, this
Very
is the number
tightly.
one show, whatever, but they never talk about how much money it's made on it, how much, whatever. They are notorious. They don't even let Fluffy, who's the guy, the Hispanic comedian Fluffy, Gabriel Iglesias, right?
Yes.
Has a whole skit in some of his newer comedy stuff talking about when he was doing a show for Netflix. Every week he would wait on that call from Netflix, and he would get the call, and the call would tell him nothing. He's so how did my show do? He's like, no, we're not here to talk about that, but you're great to keep recording. And it's well, how did I do? How's the show doing? No, we're not. So they don't even give the stars of the show the information. They definitely don't give it to the media, right? So for them to turn around and say, hey, this is worth, it cost us $21 million. It's worth $900 million to us in value is an insane number, right?
It's wild. And, this is what, when people, they hear about movies that cost, TV shows that cost a lot of money to make, this is, companies like Netflix, people that make movies, movie producers, studios, or whatever, they operate with a venture capital style model, which is we're going to throw a bunch of money at the wall here at a bunch of different ideas, which is kind of why you'll see sometimes competing studios will have the similar movies coming out at the same time. because I remember there was maybe 2-3 years ago, there was like 3 Robin Hood movies coming out at the same time.
Right, and like 2 Hercules movies came out at one time, like The Rock's and then the other guy, and there's always one that's more popular than the other, but that's been forever. Back when Deep
Bugs
Impact
Life
came out
Ants.
the same year as Bugs Life and Ants came out the same year. Deep Impact and what was it? Armageddon came out the same year, like that. So it's happened before, but this kind of thing, what you have here is one of those anomalies where you go, this is how Netflix can be Netflix for the foreseeable future, is you have relatively low cost. This is a South Korean movie, right? Or TV show that was created in South Korea. It cost them $21 million not only to create, but to produce and push out.
Right.
So that's basically their top number. Here's what it cost us entirely is $21 million. Here's what it's worth to us, $900 million. And if we can continue to do that, well, we'll just own everything, right?
Yeah. So here's the other thing. What you said earlier, which is they don't reveal their numbers to anybody. We don't know if any of what they're saying is true.
Right. There's no way to verify this other than Netflix saying it. Right?
Yes.
But we do know that obviously Squid Game, and I say we do know, they've been telling us for 2 weeks that Squid Game is their number 1 new show, that it's been watched by. But again, this is all information coming from Netflix.
Right. So we don't know if any of this is true. I just think, it's interesting that no one is going, hey, there's only Korean people in this Korean show. And that's not offensive it shouldn't be offensive to anybody, but I just think that's interesting.
Here's what I'm curious to see ultimately what Netflix. So I'll give you an example. There have been several shows throughout the last 10 or 15 years that have become new. Let's say just some fall new show on NBC, right?
Yeah.
And then I come to find out during the course of that it's actually a remade version of like a European show. Yes. Like The Office, for example, was a remake of a show that already existed. Just an American, right? Called The Office, right? Yeah. And they didn't even rename it. They just, no, this is the American version. And guess what? It's a brand new show. So if you're watching the American version of The Office for 3 seasons, and then you go, oh, holy crap, there's 5 seasons of this European Office. Right. And then you go on and you figure out it's the same characters, it has the same basic storyline. There might be little nuances, right? So in this case, there's another one called Ghost this year that just came out, and I figured out, like, no, it's a remake. But my point though is how does, let's say in this case, Squid Game, right? Netflix came out with this, they dubbed it English. They really don't have an option to turn around 4 years from now and create an English, right? An American, like redo it.
They could totally remake it. Just call it something else, right? They could turn it into a
very
movie.
Similar storyline and very similar.
So I can say this much, my family is from India. I was born here, but India is different in this. People always talk about Bollywood produces so many movies. Guess what, friends? India speaks 20 different languages, something like 20 different languages. So they have literally changed the production style of their movies to where they make a movie and they have the set, everything set up. They take the script, they translate it in 5 different languages. They have the actors there and they go, okay, Hindi people go first, now Telugu, and that's how they shoot movies, right?
Really?
Yeah.
So they don't dub it over like we do in English. No. They have different actors, or the same actors do a different language.
Because Indian, the Kerala people know that, well, that's a Tamil actor, right? So they know that that's not a guy who speaks our language. We don't want this fakery in our house. But you will see that where actors will learn, and we see this in K-pop, where Korean singers will learn different Chinese languages so that they can play in China. They'll learn a lot of different languages, and they'll speak 3 or 4. And I remember, I have a niece who's big into K-pop, and there's literally the exact same song, and there's the Chinese version and the Korean version, and the band has 20 members in it, and the Korean version is 10 guys. And
these 10 guys? Oh.
But there's an overlap, and then the guys who are in the middle, who are in the overlap, are the cuter ones, right?
Of course.
So yeah, it's all very interesting, but that's how they shoot movies in other places. So, and listen, this concept isn't new. The concept for the show Shark Tank is actually called Dragon's Den and was on in the UK and Australia for a long time, my friends. And they brought it to the US and they go, dragons. That doesn't translate into American culture. They go, Shark Tank. A couple weeks ago, they had Peter something from the original Dragon's Den from the UK crossed over to do the American show. Fascinating, right?
Nice.
Yeah. So that is one way when you are dealing with a global audience to create inexpensive content. And hey, guess what? Why do they make so many action movies? Because it's so much, because kaboom is the same thing in every language.
Well, sure, and look, Netflix has done, and they've gotten better and better in some ways. They've gotten movie stars, right? Chris Hemsworth is making a second Extraction. You've gotten big time movie stars to come in and
They're making a second Extraction.
Yes, they are making a second Extraction.
Because the first one was so good.
It was good, but it was an action movie. Again, what do you want out of an action movie, right? That's actually my biggest knock on Netflix, to be honest with you, that I think is the gap between Netflix or even a lot of other countries in their TV shows and movies and like Hollywood is the development of characters, that depth of character. So Extraction, for example, great action movie as long as you don't pay any attention to the depth of the characters in it, right?
Yeah, they're shallow like a puddle.
Right. So where if it was a Hollywood movie, there would be a lot more depth to the character. There's a lot more time spent of you getting invested in how that character feels, invested in that character's pain, invested.
Like it was a good action romp, but I wasn't. Right. And what's an interesting tidbit for our audience, we were going to reboot our original podcast, which was a movie podcast where we're talking about movies. And so the big man texted me and said, hey, can you watch Extraction? I watched it. He did not text me back for 3 weeks to record the video talking about it. We never reviewed it.
Danny's not butthurt about it at all. So
not at all.
Not butthurt about it. That was only like 2 years ago. So
yeah, I am so used to never like, hey, we're gonna do this. Then hearing nothing from you. Yeah.
Hey, we have a podcast right now that we're doing this on, but he's still butthurt. Look, it's estimated, according to what Netflix put out, people have spent 1.4 billion hours watching the show. That's billion
a lot of,
with the B.
Yeah, that's a lot of lifetime right there.
Okay, and look, this all, and again, Netflix is in the business of making money, so this all goes into the pot for them, right? It's already, Netflix was down for the year, but they've already seen like a 7% increase in their stock since this show came out, and they started leaking. And again, these are all coming from Netflix. It could all be fugazi. I don't know. Okay. But, it could all be a ploy just to increase their stock price for, in the short term because they're down. But you're talking about something that, again, according to them, the entire season of Squid Games cost them less to produce and put on their channel than Dave Chappelle's new special.
Holy crap. I guess when you think about it, they did give him $40 million for that, didn't they?
It cost less the entire season than 2 episodes of The Crown.
Wow.
So when you put it in that kind of light, you start to see why Netflix goes, hey, we need a little bit more of this.
Yeah, totally.
A little bit more of this, a little less of that. A little bit more of this, a little less than that. Now, I will say, again, even though I did enjoy it, what's that? Squid Game? Yeah, I've seen the entire season, right? Okay. So, and I say it's awesome. I also have a tendency, and you know this based on our movie review days, that I have a pretty low bar for TV shows and movies.
And you like everything.
If I'm entertained, it's worth it to me.
Yeah.
I do. So I did, when I say it's awesome, I mean in the lens of what it is. It's a South Korean TV show that they dubbed into English. So if you put it
going to be North Korean.
If you put that in perspective of that's what it is,
right,
and put your expectations there, it's great. It's amazing, right? And as far as the twists, like if you're reading a book, there's a couple of great twists in it, right?
Yeah. I just don't have the time to invest into another show. Billions is on Amazon. I wanted to start watching Startup because it's on Netflix. Where do I have the time? I'm running several successful businesses over here.
I understand.
Yeah.
But sometimes you've got to make time for certain things that are relevant. And this looks like one of those trains that, at least for Netflix, has definitely paid off. And I wonder
Totally.
for them because they've been pushing foreign TV shows down your throat for years now. Like, this is not by far not their first.
The number of times I've clicked on a show being so excited for it, and then it's like, and then it's in French. It's like, oh, Netflix. I'm this close. If I click on one more thing in French, because the French are dirty, if I click on one more thing that's in French, I swear to God, Netflix, I will be a TMTG Plus subscriber for life.
My wife won't watch anything dubbed. She hates it when their lips don't match. And she won't watch anything in subtitles either. Where I'll watch action movies in subtitle, like Ip Man, right? Ip Man are all subtitles, right? Or
Intellectual Property Man.
No. But yes, Ip Man or the Train to Busan. You know what I mean? Okay. The zombie ones. But anyway,
I have a cousin that's an intellectual property attorney. And I made that joke to him once, and he rolled his eyes and was like, "Well, that's all right." I was like, "That's actually really funny, you jerk."
So, oh, that's funny. Puns are cool.
Yeah,
and you're not even a dad.
Well,
that is a total dad joke. That is a total dad joke.
Well, before we cut everybody loose today, I just want to remind everyone that it is easier to brainwash people than it is to tell a person who is brainwashed that they are brainwashed.
I'm not going to get into why you thought that was an appropriate ending to this particular show. All right, folks, we'll see you next time.